Welcome to the Layman Seminary. We're doing the Theology Motivation paper series, which is videos that I'm doing to motivate me to finish my paper. And maybe you'll find yourself in a similar situation. If not, at least you'll be along the ride and you can see my observations on Romans. And so we're in Romans 3 right now, and the portion of my paper dealing with that. And my main goal is to get the flow right, to condense things, basically to cut my paper by at least 7 pages. And so let me start with, prayer. I know we just prayed a few minutes ago in the last video, but nothing wrong. And by the way, studies have shown supposedly, you know how those studies are, that if you take breaks between studying, you actually are more effective. So I guess from the time it takes for me to upload a video to start a new one, that's my little break that allows me to come back to my paper fresh. And so there's another effective way to help you tackle your paper. Okay, so let me pray. Father God, as we come to you right now, Lord, thank you for giving me the drive, at least the motivation to make these videos, Lord, because they're working for me. They're helping me motivate myself to finish my paper, Lord. I just pray right now that they be a blessing to others as well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so let's read the first section of Romans 3:1. Then what advantage has the Jew? Or what is the benefit of circumcision? Because, all right, so just remember Romans chapter 1, at least the latter part, he's dealing with the immoralist Jew. Romans 2, he's basically wanting them to say, oh man, those people are so bad. And then Paul's like, you're the same way. You're no different. You're no better. And then he starts explaining about how the Gentiles who didn't have the Mosaic law, they were judged by conscience, and just having the law in itself is not what God's intended law was. Intended goal was. He gave the Mosaic law, Mosaic covenant for a purpose. But and so by saying those statements, you know, somebody could come back and say, well, what's the advantage of being a Jew then? And so he's going to explain that right here. Then what advantage has the Jew? Or what is the benefit of circumcision? Great in every respect. So there's his answer. First of all, they were entrusted with the oracles of God. What then? If some didn't, it's interesting, it says first of all, because he's not given a list right here. So that means that it could be maybe of chief importance, maybe. I can't remember all the options that were given whenever we were studying this passage in the Greek. But this is not a Greek paper, so we can just keep rolling. What then, if some did not believe, their unbelief will not nullify the faithfulness of God, will it? And the answer is no. May never be. Rather, let God be found true, though every man be found a liar, as is written, that you may be justified in your words and prevail when you are judged. Now, I want to mention this off to the beginning because it just came to my mind. Many people, when they come to the book of Romans, they have one type of justification in mind, positional justification. But you'll notice right here the word justified, even though it's quoted in the Old Testament, in the book of Romans, this means vindicated. So keep that in mind, to not just limit yourself to one meaning of aspect of justification. Consider the possibility, is there an ultimate justification in mind? Is there an experiential justification? What is involved? Anyway. And prevail when you're judged. 5. But if our unrighteousness demonstrates the righteousness of God, what shall we say? The God who inflicts wrath is not unrighteous, is he? I'm speaking in human terms. Like saying this is a foolish statement, you know. May it never be, for otherwise how will God judge the world? But if through my lie the truth of God abounded to his glory, so this is kind of sarcastic here because Paul's not actually lying. Why am I also still being judged as the sinner? And why not say, as we so slanderously reported, and as some claim we say, let us do evil that good may come. Their condemnation is just. So he's replying to that. What then? Are we better than they? Not at all, for we have already charged that both Jews and Greeks are all under sin. As it is written, there is none righteous, not even one. There is none who understands. There is none who seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become useless. Interesting that it uses the word uselessness because James, whenever he's writing, he's talking about being useful to God. So you see, there's once again pointing out a similarity between James and Paul. There's none who do good. There's not even one. Their throat is an open grave. With their tongues they keep deceiving. Their poison of ashes under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet is swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their paths, and the path of peace they have not known. There's fear of God. There's no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be closed and all the world may become accountable to God. Because by the works of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight. For through the law comes the knowledge of sin. Okay. And I'm just going to leave 21 right now because it's a new section, most likely. And we probably won't get that far, but we'll see. Now, Paul discusses Jewish privilege. And yes, I made a reference here because the difference between white privilege and Jewish privilege is Jewish privilege actually exists because God gave them and only them the covenant. God only created a theocracy with Israel. Okay, so they were privileged in that way. Every Jew that was born into the theocracy of Israel was privileged in particular ways, being that he's been given God's word. So there is a such thing as a Jewish privilege, okay? But we're not definitely into the social justice stuff or going into my sociology and everything. So let's just keep that at that. Maybe in the future we can develop something like that, but right now it's just enough to say this. Now, Paul discusses Jewish privilege. Since he just convicted the Jewish Christian, he wanted to, okay, so here, this should, this should be lowercase. He wanted to make sure that his audience did not think there was no advantage in being a Jew. The advantage was that God entrusted him with the word. However, even their hypocritical unfaithfulness does not do away with God's faithfulness to his promises. Okay. Unrighteousness gives him opportunity to demonstrate righteousness in judgment. So in other words, whenever they choose to act bad, God shows that he's a perfect parent, perfect judge, and demonstrates his righteousness in judgment. God is righteous in his judgment, especially when judging the unrighteousness of humans, okay? These mocking words are slander and they're teaching about doing evil so evil may come. God shows no partiality. I don't know what that word is. I'll try to fix it later on. Spell checker and all that. Sister reformers say Romans 3 is teaching total depravity. No one seeks God. Many have built their salvation around that passage. The problem is the passage in Isaiah is service, not salvation. Okay, so just looking at this briefly, I see that there's some short sentences here that are kind of choppy that need to be worked on. So let's try to shorten up this part of the paper. Now, Paul discusses Jewish privilege. And I'm just going to put after. Or actually, I can put this in order. After, I can erase that. After convicting the Jewish Christian, okay, let's start this. After convicting the Jewish Christian, Paul discusses Jewish privilege. And I'm just going to make this 1 and 2 here. To make sure that his audience did not think there was no advantage in being a Jew. Well, I mean, the word Jewish privilege summarized that up. I mean, am I being redundant here? Let's see. Paul discusses Jewish privilege to make sure that his audience did not think there was no advantage of being a Jew. I'll leave it. The advantage was that God entrusted him with the word. However, even the hypocritical and faithless does not do away with the faithful. So we can look at this and we can see at what level I'm summarizing here. So this is 2 verses. And this is about the word that, and here's 2 verses. Here's 2 verses. This one looks like at 1 verse, so we might summarize. God is righteous in his judgment, especially when judging unrighteous humans. 5 through 8 already says that. Unrighteous gives them opportunity to stay righteous in judgment. Yeah, that's not needed. These mocking words, the these is not clear. There may not even be clear, but I'll keep it for right now. His opponents, basically, their mocking words are slandering their teaching about doing evil so evil may come. Paul calls the mockers' words slander. Doing evil so evil come. I don't need that. All right, so that's a short sentence. Let's see. A righteous gives them opportunity to demonstrate righteous in judgment. Paul calls the mockers' word slander. I really don't like the Paul calls. I mean, maybe I'll come in and say that they're slanderers, mocking, or something like that. See, this is what the problem we're running into, is these are very short, truncated sentences. So maybe I can actually do a concessive idea, something like, even though mockers slander God shows no partiality in judgment. Now, do those ideas go together real tight? I mean, is that Paul's point? Is that even though these people are mocking, I want you to know that God shows no partiality. It could work because the whole purpose of the mockers is to try to find a fault in Paul's logic. And so if Paul's being consistent and saying there's no difference between Jew and Gentile, I think that'll work. I need to really figure out how to spell partiality. So let me see if I could just turn on Grammarly just for this section. I know I can do that with other things. Yeah, I think I can. White choose to make sure, to ensure. Okay. The advantage. Yeah, I'll go ahead and use another word. Yeah, unrighteousness. See, this is just showing how much of how bad of a speller I am, guys. But it also shows you why Grammarly's helpful, right? There it is, partiality. I'm gonna keep judgment. Yeah, I know I'm repeating the word, but straight, yeah, I can fix that. Okay, don't start giving me a bunch of stuff or I'm not gonna be able to make this video. So there, as you see, there's lots of errors and things I can fix later on. But okay. So partiality and judgment. And so 7 through 9, I can actually bring together. Maybe if I was writing a commentary, I would be more accurate as far as about the divisions and stuff. Okay, so since the reformers say Romans serve as teaching total depravity, no one seeks God. Many about their salvation around this passage. Yeah, I believe that, but is that the I don't need to argue that, I don't think, not in this paper. Maybe if I was doing something else. So I could just say that let's see, the next Paul, let's see, Paul quotes the Old Testament to demonstrate how Israel failed at service. Now, that ain't the only reason, but it's something that a lot of people don't mention. Like, okay, well, if you're going to quote the Old Testament, then what's the significance of it? Failed at service. So let's eliminate this. The problem is past service, not salvation. Okay. Let's say how Israel failed at service. The righteousness is not imputed righteousness. I agree. But is that what I'm talking about right here at this point? I don't think so. So I'm just going to remove it for now. I can always put that in. Paul quotes all judges for Israel failed at service by I don't want to use referring because I took out a bunch of those, but I mean it would work by referring by showing that the whole body of Israel is sinful. Now I want to show y'all this, even though I'm not including this in the paper, but it's a really cool idea that's going on in the book of Isaiah. I discovered this when I was studying Isaiah in probably 2011, I think. And it just blew my mind. Let's see. So Isaiah is writing, he's bringing what's called a reap judgment against Israel. In other words, convicting them of covenant violation. And he's writing particular to the Judah. Let's see here. And so right here, he's talking about how Israel's unfaithful. But look right here. The whole head is sank. Sorry. The whole head is sick, and the whole heart is faint. From the sole of the foot even to the head, there is nothing sound in it. Only bruises, welts, raw wounds, not pressed out of bandage, nor softened with oil. So it's describing the nation of Israel as a man or a human. Not sure if it's a reference to a man, but most likely to somebody that's been beat up in battle. They've been disciplined. They got in a fight. They got their butt kicked. However you want to say it. What's interesting though, when I studied this passage, depending on what king you take to be in power at this time, it was actually, this passage is prophetic. It hadn't happened yet. So Israel would be being described as beat up and everything, actually during a time whenever they were prosperous. And also where that deals with divine discipline, but also this deals with the idea that Israel may look good on the outside, but on the inside, this is what they look like. That's a possible way to deal with it. But you have this imagery of this wounded man, okay? And it's referring to the nation Israel. It keeps going on. A watchman's hut, and then he's using the description about leaving a few survivors. So the world, this idea of a refugee from war, somebody that's been underneath the discipline of the Lord so much that they barely survived. Now, let me say this. I believe God heals. But when you study Isaiah 53 and you're talking about the servant, which is the nation of Israel, and Jesus Christ is the ultimate servant, I think understanding how the book of Isaiah began by talking about that imagery, about the man that's beat up, bruised, and all of that is significant. Because when we keep going, here is the faithful Israelite, right? Christ. Well, the first one was disciplined because of his unfaithfulness. This one is disciplined because of his faithfulness, right? And where is that passage? Oh boy, I'm not doing very well. Well, the statement that says by his stripes we're healed. Let's see if I can find it. Healed. Yeah, by his scourging we are healed. So here's the man all beat up once again, all right? And we know this is Jesus Christ at the cross. But you linking that idea together that you have the unfaithful beat up man and then you have the faithful beat up man is helpful because you do have the concept of healing. And this passage is quoted in the New Testament, but I just want y'all to see that motif because I think Paul is doing the same thing in Romans 3. Now we know that in Ephesians 2, which I think was written after Romans, Paul uses the one new man imagery. Okay, but here he's quoting all these Old Testament passages. Oh, this talking about righteousness. Okay, that's why I mentioned ethical righteousness in a minute. But he's describing the nation as battered, beat up, unfaithful, deceitful, and all of this. And I think it's very similar to the Isaiah thing. And some of these quotes are actually from Isaiah. So that's what I was trying to articulate. And I don't know how much of that I will include there. I could put a footnote, maybe describing that motif at the bottom. Not sure. But yeah, Israel failed at service by showing that the whole body of Israel is sinful. Okay. He quotes Old Testament passages to show that Christians are no better than Jews. All right. These passages also show that the Gentile Christians, I'll capitalize that in a minute, are no better than the Jews. I'm not sure if I like this right here because I've talked about this in other places and it's more clear. Because, I mean, he's dealing, I mean, let's just be honest here. What then? Are we better than they? So the we is the Gentile, right? Not at all, for we've already charged that both Jews and Greek are under sin, as it is written. And so basically what he's doing here, he's saying this condition that described Israel also describes the Gentile as well. So let's see if we can clarify this. That the Gentile Christians are no better than the Jewish Christians. And so this is where I'll use the, I don't know if it's referring to the Gentiles just in general or to Gentile Christians. I'll go with the Gentile Christian idea. If nothing else, it makes us be able to abbreviate. And we'll go with the Jewish Christian idea. All right, so let's see if we can clear this up. These passages also show that Gentile Christians are no better than the Jewish Christians because both failed to serve. But that's redundant because it said, demonstrate how Israel failed at service by showing that the whole body is sinful. Yet, let's see, let me go back to this. Are we better than they? Wait a minute. Yeah, I remember this now. Who's the we? That's the thing you got to ask. Because he's talking about Israel right here, right? And then he says, are we better than they? The we, Paul's not a Gentile, okay? And I know there's other ways that the we can be taken. Are we better than they? So is this the idea? Are the Jewish Christians better than the Jews living underneath the Mosaic law? Are we better than they? Not at all. For we've already charged that both Jews, which would include Jewish Christians, and Greeks, which would include Gentile Christians, are all under sin. So I can definitely see that going on here. I just don't know how much of that I want to articulate in this paper. Because honestly, there's so much that I can expand and elaborate on. But if I do that, I'll never make my goal and I'll never make my deadline. Okay. Okay, I mentioned 320 here. Let's see how we can do this. Now we know that whatever the law says speaks to those on the law, so the realm may be closed and all the world may become accountable to God. All the world. Because the worst law, the first to justify inside. Okay, so has both failed to serve. Okay. And their faithlessness are things Christians are guilty of. I don't know how to articulate that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to are things all Christians are guilty of? And failure to apply Paul is still addressing their failure and let's see, Israel's failure to apply the Mosaic covenant. He's not saying the Mosaic covenant is still in force. I understand why people would say that, but because the next statement is going to clarify, and I'll mention it now, that just so that y'all can see where I'm going with this. But now, apart from the law, in other words, these statements that he's talking about, he's basically making a comparison of what life was like underneath the theocracy of Israel before the cross. And he's making these statements about that. But now he's making a distinction here. Apart from the law, the righteous God has been manifested. And the interesting thing about it is that this has occurred, but it's in harmony with the law and the prophets and everything. So let's see what else I want to include here. Another thing right here, after bringing support for their covenant violation, which that's what I related those Old Testament passages. But it actually needs to go back to 10, not 15. So let's see if I could break this down, eliminate some of this. Paul quotes demonstrates that Israel had failed at service and in covenant violation. Okay. He clarified that the Gentiles are also Jews because they lived up to what God entrusted to them. Okay, so this is a higher level summary, I guess. So that means I can actually stick it up at a higher level. Duh. Even though Marcus got your person in judgment. Let's see if we Gentiles are also under judgment because they're not lived up to what God entrusted to them, which is conscience. Let's see if we can make that work. Sounds like it makes sense. 1 second, I need to check my message. I got my friend Dane that's in seminary. He's going to help me with my paper as well. 11 your time. All right. Let's see here. It's very good. Apply the Mosaic covenant. So these are questions that I have right here. What that means is that I haven't clarified this yet. I've asked myself interpretive questions. And so I need to do a little bit more work on this before I even discuss it in the video. And so what that probably means is that I will stop the video right here at 3:20. But I pray that this was a blessing to y'all. That you see a little bit of the process and how it's helping me motivate myself. I think I've done 3 or 4 videos in one day, and where I'm constantly working on this paper, and I know Romans is a big book, and there's a lot more to do, but this is making me more optimistic. Plus, later on, I'll be studying with my wife as well, which is always a good motivation. Well, anyway, if you're blessed by this video, share it with others, like it, subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell if you want notifications, and please, most of all, keep this ministry in prayer. God bless.